Hey everybody, so last Friday, I believe, it was announced that James Gunn was removed. He was fired from directing Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, a movie which he was well deep into the writing process on. He obviously directed parts 1 and 2, wrote parts 1 and 2. He was so integral to these characters. He was part of the writing process for the dialogue for the characters in Infinity War. And he was let go on Friday because of tweets that he wrote 10 years ago that were, to state the obvious, just very much morally reprehensible. They're just very disturbing tweets.
I'm sorry, have you removed the graphic?
Jennifer, I started streaming. Like just morally reprehensible. I mean, just very disturbing tweets about pedophilia. So it was revealed that he posted these on a blog post. And so then it became public knowledge. Disney didn't like what had been said. And so he was removed from the film. And so that naturally has sparked a lot of discussion over the weekend. And so a lot of people have been asking me for several days now, what's my take on it? What's my thoughts on it? And I didn't want to rush out a video. I didn't want to quickly put thoughts out there without processing it for a little while, without letting it kind of settle for a little bit, see kind of where things were landing, how different people were responding, and also getting a better grasp of the full context of it. But enough people kept asking me that I thought I should probably put something out there because obviously I talk about Marvel a lot on my channel. My take on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is one of the most infamous or famous takes on my entire channel, so naturally it would make sense for me to tackle this particular subject, which even though I don't particularly want to talk about it because it's pretty really heavy, unpleasant stuff. As I go into this, my plan is not to try and convince you that I'm right. I'm not trying to convince you to go one way or think the other way, think he should have been fired, shouldn't have been fired, should be rehired. That's not really my goal in this. My goal is to just put some ideas out there that I think are very useful and important for processing all of this in a more intelligent and honest fashion, which isn't just reactionary. It's not just I like him. It's not just I was offended. It's not any of those different things. Let's try and stop and think through all of this in a balanced, properly handled fashion. So with that in mind, I've got, I think, 7 points for what I'm going to talk about. Hopefully I can go long when I have 7 points, so I'm going to try not to do that. So point number one, things that is really, really important for people to understand about this is as we dive into talking about James Gunn, why he wasn't or wasn't fired, one of the first things that I've actually had multiple conversations with people about, multiple people I've had to debate this with, is the issue here that James Gunn is a pedophile or that James Gunn has a sick sense of humor. So my first thing I want to discuss is he a pedophile or does he have a sick sense of humor? Because I've been in multiple conversations with people where someone has said, I stand with James Gunn, and the response from someone was, you stand with a pedophile, which that is a strong statement. And here's the key thing. If we're talking about is James Gunn a pedophile, who cares whether he's fired from a movie? He belongs in prison. If that's the case, if you believe he's a pedophile, there's no conversation about does he belong directing a movie. The only conversation is why isn't he in prison? Why isn't he being investigated? If he's a pedophile. The problem is I don't think that anyone is actually accusing him of being an actual pedophile. And when we say pedophile, what we're saying is someone that has molested children. Someone that has had physical, inappropriate contact with a child. That's what that means. It does not mean someone has a sick, disturbing sense of humor. That's one thing we can talk about whether that's okay or not. Your issues with the fact that he made jokes that are wildly offensive. That's one issue, but it's not the same thing as touching children. If we're talking about an actual person that has touched children, I mean, I'll take him out back, beat the crap out of him, and call the police, and they can drag him off to prison and take care of the body, whatever's left. If we're talking about that. But I don't think anyone thinks that's the actual case because there's no evidence that James Gunn has done anything with children. I haven't heard anything about that. I haven't heard one person indicate child come forward. It's all a set of tweets that he made, publicly. Not something they dug up like he was texting secretly with someone and we found out what he was saying behind closed doors. These were his public tweets making pedophilia jokes. Gross, disturbing, disgusting, but it's not the same thing as him touching kids. And that's so important that as we're talking about this, if you are on side, James Gunn should have been fired. He's disgusting. I think he's an abomination. Make sure it's for something that's true, which is he made disgusting jokes. Or if you think that he is an actual pedophile, if you think this is evidence of that, then you should want him in jail. Don't talk about him being fired, because of course he's going to be fired because he's going to be in prison. So those are very important. It's you don't slander, like you're doing something morally wrong if you slander him by calling him a pedophile for making a joke. They're not the same thing. That is not, it's like you have to distinguish the two. It dishonors actual victims of pedophilia to call a joke the same thing. And that's a very key point, number one. So point number one, we have to distinguish, are we talking about, is he a pedophile, or does he have a sick, disturbing sense of humor that we all are grossed out by, that we think is morally repugnant? But they're two different things. Issue number two, thing number two I want to bring up. Continuing off of this idea that and my take on that, I think all the evidence says that he just has a sick sense of humor. So point number two for me, James Gunn has always had a sick sense of humor. That's not new information. He has always had a sick sense of humor publicly. His career started working for Troma. Troma is I don't know if they still make movies or not, but like made schlocky, gross, crass movies, very dirty stuff. Back in the 80s and 90s in particular, I know they continued into the zeros, but he started working for them back in the 90s. I mean, it's a very, if you take that content and just kind of throw it on the Twitter of any sort of A-list actor, director these days, the sorts of stuff that's just kind of casually in a Troma movie from the 80s, it looks horrible. It looks like, what's wrong with you? You're disgusting. It's schlocky, gross stuff from a very different time, for like pre-political correctness time period. That's where he started. So he's always publicly had a gross sense of humor. Like for me, they actually had a Toxic Crusade. So one of the big famous Troma movies was Toxic Avenger. And they made a kids cartoon out of it called the Toxic Crusaders in the 90s, which I watched. I was like, oh, Toxic Crusaders. And then I found there was a movie that it was based on. I was like, oh, I'll check out this movie. Watched the movie. And I've been scarred for life ever since because they're pretty harsh stuff. But this is a guy that worked some pretty brutal stuff into his scripts for the Scooby-Doo movies. He directed the movie Super, which is extremely violent. Very harsh sense of humor. Even in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which is a Disney movie. You have a child being tortured. You have people being thrown into space while people are laughing. You have patricide. You have a father killing thousands of his own children. I mean, just very dark stuff. And it's a Disney movie, and it's played lighthearted. This is James Gunn's sense of humor. So there's a side to it where I go, we've always known he had a sick sense of humor. So one of the ongoing things for me is, where exactly is the line? He came from Troma. So I have a hard time exactly taking some of this as like, what? He made disturbing tweets, because he's always had a very dark sense of humor. Well, I'll get to the super chats at the end if that's what you're trying to reference. Okay. You were raising your hand. Next one. Third thing. So point number one, you have to distinguish between, are we talking about a pedophile or a guy with a very disturbed sense of humor? You have to distinguish between the two, and you can't call a guy with a sick sense of humor a pedophile. And if you think he is a pedophile, you should want him in jail. Second one, he's always had a publicly very sick sense of humor. They brought him into the mainstream, but it doesn't change the fact that he's a guy with a very dark side to him. Third thing, Disney can do what needs to do its best for Disney. Disney should do what's best for Disney. And they're a business. They have to protect their brand. They have to think through the consequences of associating with someone that didn't just put out like one inappropriate tweet. This was, I don't even know how many. I've heard someone say 10,000. I've heard someone say 1,000. I heard someone say hundreds. This was a lot. of crass rape and pedophilia jokes. That does not fit with the Disney brand. That obviously does not fit with what they stand for. And I think it raises some questions or some thoughts that kind of come to mind. Like, if he made these tweets today, or if he made them, not today, if he made these tweets a week ago, and they weren't 10 years old, they were from right now, and he tweeted those things out, I think we'd all agree, yeah, Disney needs to fire this guy. This guy's, well, you think you're going to direct Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 while actively making these jokes? We'd all say he should be fired because Disney needs to do its best for their brand. But that's not what happened. These are tweets from 10 years ago. So the question comes up then, how far back do you hold things against someone? If these were from 25 years ago, would we say it's okay? If he was on some message board back in the early days of the internet and we found these jokes, would we say it was 25 years ago, he was only 25 years old? Would we forgive it then? So how far back, what's the statute of limitations on making horrendous jokes? That's an important question. Or maybe you're someone that would even say, hey, free speech, he can make whatever jokes he wants on Twitter and Disney shouldn't be able to fire him for them. Just be honest if that's where you're coming from. Because once again, like, you have to, like, what's the clear line? Is it that he made the jokes? Is that he made the jokes within the last 15 years, within the last 10 years? Where exactly is your line on that? And Disney needs to do what's best for Disney. And maybe your line is, has he apologized? Has he apologized and changed? Well, he has apologized for these comments. He's apologized on numerous occasions for different things over the last 10 years. So where exactly is your line? And what do you think that, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to try and tell you what you should think about what Disney should do in this situation. But from my perspective, you just have to think through it. Where exactly is the line on these things? How far back? Is an apology good enough? If an apology plus a year, is that good enough? And then related to this, think Disney can do its best for them. Disney needs to think through these things. But going back to what I said in my previous point, he's always had a sick sense of humor. So why is it now that Disney is bothered by this? And that's a question for me that makes us very uncomfortable, because I'm pretty sure Disney had an idea that he wrote these tweets a long time ago. Because when you hire someone in the 21st century, you look up their history on the internet. James Gunn was associated with very dark things. Trauma, super. Almost certainly someone looked this stuff up. They were aware it happened, and they seemed to be okay with all of his previous stuff, or they didn't know about it, which doesn't put them in a good light either. They knew about things. They knew about certain things. They probably knew about these tweets, and they didn't care about it until it was public, in which case they need to do what's best for them, but at least be honest, you're trying to cover up a PR mess, not actually like, this guy is gross, we're going to get rid of him. They probably knew he was a pretty gross guy with a dark sense of humor long before any of this happened, and they need to be honest with them. They can do what's best for them. I would suggest it's not best for them to behave. Things seem shady about this. Which leads to my next point, point number 4 for me. Disney seems very reactionary. And I would say I have a problem with how reactionary they were. Which is to say, a story broke, and the next day, he's fired. I mean, it was so quick. Story breaks, he's fired. They didn't kind of let the dust settle. They didn't see where things landed. They didn't say, we are taking this very seriously and we're going to make an announcement in a week. It was just, there's very bad press surrounding him. He's fired. And I think you're starting to see a big, gigantic backlash about that. I don't think they thought through the fact of people going, wait, these were 10 years ago. Wait, what's happening right now? You just fired the guy that directed the previous 2 movies? The actors, Dave Bautista has openly stated on Twitter, I am not okay with this. Sean Gunn, James Gunn's brother, the Kraglin, in these movies has said, I am not okay with this, went on a Twitter rant about it. They put out a petition. It's, I'm pretty sure over 100,000 signatures on it already saying reinstate him. And it has multiple A-list like actors, directors, writers, people that you know who they are have signed this. Not the most popular, not the most powerful guy in Hollywood right now, but Bobcat Goldthwait, so back in the 80s was a pretty big deal. But he has told Disney, I want you to remove my name, or excuse me, remove my voice from your parks because I am not okay with what you've done. So Disney made a decision. Oh man, there's a bad backlash over these tweets. They look really bad. Let's make a decision. And now they're facing a second bad backlash, which is what happens when you make a rash decision without firmly thinking through it, without working through the different angles of it. It's a mess right now. There's no good options at this point in time because people are pissed. Some of the cast of Guardians of the Galaxy is pissed. And that's what happens when you make a reactionary decision about something that people actually care about based off information that was public for 10 years that you didn't seem to care about before this, based on a guy that had a sixth sense of humor, which everybody's known for a very long period of time, and he's already apologized for it. That's very reactionary. I'm not saying that it's the wrong decision. I'm saying the timing of it was definitely very, very bad. The way they decided to handle it. Point 5. I'm not actually going to have 7 of these. I actually discussed my point number 6 earlier. But number 5, I'm very uncomfortable with the current trend of digging up 10, 15, 20, 25-year-old quotes or articles or tweets from people and holding them against people today. Removing them of the context in which they were posted. And this isn't just a James Gunn thing, though obviously that's the context under which I'm bringing it up. But, I mean, they did this with Bernie Sanders, they did it with Ron Paul, they do it with Supreme Court justices, and they dig up something said in some other context, remove it from those contexts, and just put these quotes out there that just look horrible, divorced of context. And sometimes James Gunn's tweets, even with context, are horrible, offensive jokes that aren't funny. But I don't think this is a healthy practice. I don't think it's something we need to be getting into this witch hunt of trying to figure out what's the worst thing that everyone has ever said and throw it out there as some sort of mechanism to silence them, to embarrass them, to even the playing field. This is a really bad, dangerous precedent, especially when you combine that with corporations like Disney are giving into it. It creates a scenario where everyone is in the middle of kind of this, I'll say personally for me, I'm starting to kind of grow in fame and have like 50,000 subscribers. There's all sorts of stuff that I'm starting to think, all right, I should probably pull this off the internet. I don't even know what's in there. I've never made pedophilia jokes, but I don't know what thing I have said could be taken out of context of when it was written, when it was said, and someone will use it against me. Like, I've thought about even going through my channel, starting to purge some of the stuff when I first started, as I was trying to figure out how to do my channel right. I was like, no one's ever going to see this stuff. I'm never going to be anybody. Well, now I am. And so I have to, I'm thinking, just because of this culture that's been created of digging up something from someone to, just do a smear job against them, I should probably clean up some of my social media to clear things out. And that's a very weird place to be, because I'm not a pedophile. I'm not this wildly offensive, divisive person. But at the same time, I find myself needing to think through the long-term ramifications of some things. So I do not like this current trend of digging up things from the past and holding it against people. Especially things that have been public. It doesn't seem like the best way to do public discourse. And so that's kind of bothersome to me. So to go back through these real quick, and if you're tuning in a little bit late on this, first thing I want to make sure you need to do is decipher between, are you accusing him of actually being a pedophile, someone that has wronged children, or are you accusing him of someone that's made sick jokes? Because sick jokes equals you handle him one way, disturbed, gross, I don't like this guy, I can't believe someone would make jokes like that. If he's touched kids, we shouldn't even talk about him being fired. He belongs in prison. And all of us are probably okay with if we beat the crap out of him before he goes to prison. We're probably okay with that if he's touched kids. But there doesn't seem to be any evidence of that. Second thing, He's always had a sick sense of humor. He worked for Troma. He did the movie Super. So even some of the stuff in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 in a Disney movie, it's the reason I call it the most distasteful MCU film, because he has a very dark sense of humor, and I don't think it fits well in the MCU, and he put it in that film. Third thing, Disney needs to do what's best for Disney. But point number 4, Disney seems like they're being very reactionary. Very reactionary. I don't know that they made the right or wrong decision. I haven't decided if I think that he should have been fired or not. But the timing, I think, was very bad. And then as an overarching theme on all of this, I'm very uncomfortable with this trend of digging up 10-year-old words about someone, 25-year-old words, and holding it against people, divorcing it from context, not caring about how they've changed, grown, apologized, being like, you said something stupid back in 1993. You posted something on Facebook. I'm not very comfortable with a lot of that stuff, especially when we're not even listening to what people have to say about, no, I take all that back. We're not listening to people, their responses to it. We're just being like, here's the headline. They said something horrible. That's very uncomfortable for me. In just a moment, I'm going to take some questions and responses. So if you want to get a couple of things, I'm going to do one more point, and then we can get to chat boardy type things.
Like 10 minutes.
I understand. It's right now it's the Texas heat. Our air conditioner not working very well, and so if I'm sweating, it's not only because I'm talking fast, talking about something uncomfortable, but it's really, really hot in here. So we're gonna go for it's 109 degrees outside. Whew! And the air conditioner's not working, of course, and I've got bright lights on me. And my wife is pregnant, so she has her own private air conditioner right over there. One final point, my point number 7. I skipped over 6. There is no 6. Number 7 is a lot of people have been bringing up the political motives that were the context under which this information was brought up, which was some alt-right guy known for kind of these gotcha type articles, dug this up, posted it. And so a lot of people are going like, this is, messed up. He shouldn't be fired. This was brought up for disingenuous reasons. My perspective is, I just told you, I don't like it when anybody does this stuff. I don't like it when anybody does these gotcha type, look what I dug up on someone in this sort of fashion. So I don't agree with that, with the way they did that or anything like that. But it doesn't really change much for me. It doesn't change really the context. It's like a minor sub-point to me. For the simple fact of the matter of, he said this stuff. He wrote the tweets. Does it like, and they didn't hack his phone. They didn't break into his computer and do something immoral to get this information. It was public. So they didn't do anything wrong. All they did was like, here's what James Gunn has said. And so what people have said is James Gunn has been publicly bashing Trump with almost everyone else in Hollywood, and therefore they dug up dirt on him, and that's what this is all about. And that's the motives of why it was published, but people aren't offended by rape jokes because they're on conservative or on the right or a Trump supporter. They're offended by rape and pedophilia jokes because they're offensive. He wrote them to be offensive, and even in the context he was trying to be provocative is what he said. He's trying to be a provocateur. So it doesn't really have anything to do, like, that's the context under which it was brought up, but it doesn't change the actual scenario. He wrote horrible things, and Disney has to figure out what to do with that. I think they reacted a little bit too soon. I don't know what they should have done with that. But I don't think there's this thing where we do kind of the comparative stuff. And, Trump said this, and so why is it okay? Trump said this, and James Gunn didn't. It's not okay what either one said. They're both horrific things to say. They're not okay things to joke about. And that should be the standard. Is it okay to joke about these things? Not, did someone on the other side say it? We tend to be very forgiving and gracious towards people we agree with and cynical towards people on the other side. And I don't think that's the right way to do things. I think we should have a firm standard that we hold everybody to. Rape jokes? Bad. Pedophilia jokes? Bad. P-word grabbing jokes? Comments? Whatever they were from Trump? Bad. Like, it's all bad. Don't say stuff like that. And hold everyone to those same standards no matter what side they're on. So, the political side to it, I don't think that changes the equation all that much. Okay, so that's my little, 20-minute monologue, 15-minute monologue. Were there any questions, comments? Did anyone have any use?
Questions or comments?
useful
I'm
feedback.
surprised by the number of people that hadn't heard this yet. There were a lot of people in the chat like, what? He was fired? Why was he fired? There was a lot of conversation.
Yeah, it's always interesting the way that different people hear different things. The internet's been going nuts since about Friday. James Gunn was fired because he wrote a bunch of hundreds
10,000. That's what it said on Google. I'm just saying.
Supposedly, he wrote 10,000 rape and pedophilia jokes on Twitter 10 years ago. That sounds suspicious to me because that's such a large number of how the amount of time. I think that's how many tweets he deleted, but that's so people went, he deleted 10,000 tweets. That means he deleted 10,000 rape jokes. No, he deleted all the tweets before one period of time. I'm pretty sure is what actually happened. And that's what like Ryan Johnson deleted 25,000 tweets. And I'm pretty sure what he was doing was, I don't know what's in there. I just need to protect myself. And Disney probably even told him, just delete all your old stuff. There's no reason for us to it's a liability. That's my same take on a bunch of my stuff. I need to just purge some stuff because it's a liability because someone can dig up something and take it out of context. Questions, comments?
I wanted to know if you had heard about Michael Rooker leaving Twitter. Because in protest, saying that Twitter ruins lives, and so he left because James Gunn was fired from. So
I hadn't heard that one yet. So I
heard that today.
So I hadn't heard Michael Rooker left. Zoe Saldana and Nebula, both of them basically put out tweets saying, "Hey, I love all the cast of Guardians of the Galaxy. I love everyone involved." So very non-committal. But at the same time, clearly trying to chime in on it. Chris Pratt chimed in, and his was a quote from the Book of James about being slow to speak and quick to listen, which is a very Chris Pratt type response. He's likes his Bible. So they've created a mess for themselves in the way they've decided to handle this, in responding so fast without waiting to kind of see where things settle. Waiting to really see how Gunn responds, how the public, and just going, you're done. And I just have such a hard time believing that they didn't know about these tweets. Because that's when you hire someone, you look up their past. And he's a guy with a dark sense of humor. You have to look up his past. In which case, it seems so much more so like, this is nothing about values. It's nothing about, that joke was too far. It's everything about PR. And that does not sit well with me.
You said you had SuperChats. Can you pull those up? Because I can't see them.
I said that?
Yes, you did.
No, there's only one, but there's no question.
Oh, okay. Largely, the biggest question is, who do you think should replace him?
So I might make a video on this. I wasn't planning on doing this video at all. There were so many people asking my take on the franchise, or specifically on the situation. And so I ended up doing this video instead of my who should direct it one. But so the obvious pick is Taika Waititi. That's probably the first person that came to everyone's mind because obviously when they did Thor Ragnarok, when people first saw the trailers and everything for it, they went, "What? They're Guardians of the Galaxying up Thor." Which is kind of what they did. I mean, it was very different, but it was very similar in the same sense. I mean, wacky sense of humor, bright colors, witty dialogue, ensemble cast, a lot of things that were trademarks of Guardians, and even 70s rock music, trademarks brought over. Taika is the obvious frontrunner. He's the person that would most easily bridge the gap, and the most people would be like, "Oh, okay, I feel a lot better with this." And I'll throw this out there too. James Gunn's great with the characters of Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't think he's great with story. Obviously, I'm well known for not liking Volume 2 for a number of different reasons. But a big one of the reasons I don't care for it all that much is I don't even think the story is very oddly structured with the main villain not being revealed until an hour and a half into the movie. And so you have like a main villain in the first act, the Sovereign, a main villain in the second act, Taserface, and then the stories kind of come together in the end. Like, it's an odd way to do a story. And it was character-based, but I don't think it works well for this genre all that well. And even one of the criticisms of the first Guardians of the Galaxy is it's a weaker story. It's a fairly kind of template, guy wants revenge to blow up a planet type thing. So, I think there's a lot of benefit to bringing someone in that can possibly do story better. Taika's the obvious choice. But I think there's a lot of people that can do ensembles. Joss Whedon can do ensembles and witty dialogue of very broken people. That's what he did on TV. That's how he did Avengers. There's just a lot of people. So I'm not really worried it won't work. I'm more worried about the just PR mess, the broken fan base. Typically, MCU's had a strong fan base. Disney, via James Gunn's horrible tweets from a while ago, dropped a bomb that might divide the fan base in a Star Wars-esque way. What do we got?
Well, I wanted Brad Bird has been mentioned a couple times as a director. Michael Bay.
So Brad Bird, he was my pick for a Star Wars movie, and I've called Guardians of the Galaxy kind of like a 21st century Star Wars, so I could see that one. There's some.
Russo brothers have come up multiple times.
I mean, Russo brothers are an obvious choice in the sense of they're the darlings of the MCU right now. It's not going to be them though. Unless they push the movie. If they push the movie back and say it's the Russos, that would make sense. But they're doing some little movie called Avengers 4 or whatever it's called. Like, it's not going to be them unless this movie gets pushed back, which I don't think they're going to push it back. Feige's got a pretty set plan on these things, so I wouldn't guess that it would be them. But, I mean, Brad Bird's a possibility. I'm always a huge fan of Jon Favreau. He hasn't done an ensemble-type movie, so that would be my hesitation, where I think like a Joss Whedon would fit a little bit better if you're going to bring back a previous Marvel person. So, yeah, there's some ones that come to my mind. Not Michael Bay. That's a bad choice.
Super chat from John Sturchio.
Okay.
I know you disliked Volume 2, so do you think Volume 3 will be better without Gunn?
I just see a lot of potential in it being fresh and new, is what I see. That's kind of my initial kind of take on it. But I wasn't really nervous about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 really either, with Gunn involved. Because I love the first one so much, I don't fully hold the second one against him. I just don't like what he did. He took some risks and they didn't pay off. And for me, that's where I get frustrated with people get mad at me about not liking Volume 2. I'm just still excited for Volume 3. I'm not trashing Gunn for the film. I'm not saying that the guy's a hack. I'm not doing any of that stuff. That didn't make me less excited for what he was going to do with the third one. And I think that's the difference between me and like toxic fanboys and a lot of Star Wars stuff, is that they turn on the people. I haven't turned on anyone. It just didn't work for me. They took some risks that didn't work for me. I appreciate that he took risks. I think that's a good thing. They just didn't work for me. And that's a healthy way to view people taking risks. So it doesn't make me necessarily. I'm either way. Like, it depends on who if they announce Taika Waititi as the guy taking over, I think I would be like, yeah, I think I'm more excited about that than I was with the James Gunn version. If they announce pretty much anyone else, unless they come up with something real clever, I think my initial reaction's a little bit down. But all of it's all kind of in the same. Neither one, and none of it's like, wow, I'm so excited, or I'm so disappointed. As long as they don't get someone terrible, it's all kind of in the same category of level of excitement, possibilities, potential. Anyone anything else? One final question, because you got to take kids to punching class.
Oh, yeah, we're not going to make that. The air guy is coming.
Oh, then we can keep going. Okay, so.
Well, he's coming, so I'm going to have to go do that.
Okay.
In a second.
Still give me a question.
A lot of people are. Basically, there's been a lot of the same thing. A bunch of people are expressing the same frustration. There's a lot of frustration that he got fired prior to Kathleen Kennedy destroying Star Wars.
And I would throw this out. It's a funny sentiment. I think as you think about what is best for Disney to do, I think you should remove yourself as much as you can. Just remove as much as you can how much you love Guardians of the Galaxy or love James Gunn. And just think about it. Is it the right thing to do or not? Based on what he did, is it right or wrong to keep him? Was it right or wrong to hold something from 10 years ago, tweets from 10 years ago against someone? That's what I think you need to look at, not, I really like James Gunn, so you should forgive him. That's a really unhealthy way to do morality. If you think that rape jokes and pedophilia jokes are morally reprehensible, that should have nothing to do with Disney, and someone that's sick, it doesn't matter that you like their movies. Or if you'd say, hey, people make crappy jokes, they make jokes that fall flat, they make dark jokes, and they learn, they apologize, and they move on. Let that be what guides it, not, how much you like James Gunn. But yeah, it's kind of funny we have Kathleen kidding. There was another super chat from Ben Laurenwicks. Laurenwicks, I'm not quite sure if I pronounced that right. You said, how about J.J. Abrams, Star Trek, Star Wars? I mean, I love J.J. Abrams. So, I think... I guess we haven't had him in the MCU. So I don't know why I guessed that. We haven't had him in the MCU, so I'd be, if they announced J.J. Abrams doing Guardians of the Galaxy, for me, I would be like, oh, that would be a very positive. He's also not strong on story. He's strong on the ride, the roller coaster. He's good with little quips. I don't know if he's necessarily great with ensemble's not necessarily the word that comes to mind, but I guess you can think Alias. There's some ensembles. There's definitely ensemble casts in his movies, just not necessarily in the same way as that kind of family dynamic that you have with Guardians. That Whedon has done a little bit more. But if they announced JJ, I'd be very excited. I'm a JJ fan. I'm not in any way on the JJ hate train at all.
Some people are asking if you're open to the possibility of Gunn coming back, especially in light of the petition and the number of signatures on it.
So am I open to the... so my wife's leaving, so I'll close this out. She's going to try and come back, but I might be closing this out in just a few minutes. I can't follow the chat board, so if you do put a super chat in, if you really want me to answer something, I can catch it over there. But I can't follow the chat board because it's moving too quick. Am I open to Gunn coming back? I am open to it. If they announce he's coming back and they do a joint press conference and they walk out and the guy head of Disney, Kevin Feige, James Gunn walk out and they go, just kidding, we talked through it and we're okay. If they do this, not reactionary, if they did this a month from now, they put out a press release right now saying, hey, we're rethinking things, we're putting options out there, we're going to consider it, considering some things, we're listening to you, and we're thinking long term about our policies. And then a month from now, after reconsidering it, once emotions have faded, and they make that decision, I'd be cool with it. What's the chances that Disney is going to cave to a petition? What's the chances that Disney's going to do a, just kidding, we fired him, but we changed our mind, whoops? How much brand damage does that do if they just kind of own the fact that they were reactionary and we screwed up, and to bring back someone that made pedophilia jokes? That doesn't seem like something that would be wise for Disney to do. So the odds that James Gunn would come back, the odds that they could work this out and it'll be like, we found a way to kind of move the pieces around, it seems very unlikely that they would be able to do that. But I would be open to it if not done reactionary. It can't be tomorrow, we changed our minds, we saw what you guys said on the internet, whoop, Dave Bautista's mad at us, Michael Rooker got off of Twitter, therefore that's where in all of this, I've said it before that Disney was so reactionary that they shot themselves in the foot. Because it was such a fast decision that in and of itself, it's bad PR, just the way it was done. So many people feel like, what? You didn't even stop to think about it? You just fired him after years based off something from 10 years ago that you probably knew about? Just because of that, they have created such a mess from themselves. Potentially, it is something that could screw up and divide up the MCU fan base that has been so strong because they botched something so bad. Granted, James Gunn writing rape jokes puts them in an awkward situation. It's a little bit of I don't know what you're supposed to do in that situation, but that's why you probably shouldn't hire someone with such a questionable past for Disney. It eventually kind of can have consequences. Let me see if I can actually follow the chat board just a little bit. See if we got some names coming in. Lord and Miller is someone I saw in the chat boards. Yeah, Lord and Miller would be another one that if they announced that and they stuck to it. Now, I don't know if Lord and Miller would come back to do a Disney one after, that little oopsie with Solo. Lord and Miller's kind of wacky, insane sense of humor could be a great follow-up inside of the MCU. Or inside the MCU, follow up with Guardians of the Galaxy. You could see that working well. Way better than with Solo. Solo, that just seemed like an odd, Lord and Miller, how does that fit in the Star Wars universe? But the Guardians of the Galaxy universe, they've already done Looney Tunes humor. They already did that jump sequence where faces were doing all that wacky stuff. And so Lord and Millerisms can fit pretty nicely into the world of Guardians of the Galaxy that we've already seen and has already been established. So that's a possibility. Let's see. I don't know. Lord and Miller, I've seen lots in that one. I'm seeing someone say Guy Ritchie. That's an interesting one. I would have been with you on Guy Ritchie, except I just feel like he's been off a long time. It seems like they can't find a way to use his energy right. Maybe Guardians of the Galaxy would be one that would match kind of his directorial style, wacky sense of humor, and the way he does that. Maybe it would fit nicely in there, but he's been on such an off streak for me that it's been a long time since I've watched a Guy Ritchie movie and been like, that was awesome. I loved that. I actually, for me, it's Snatch. Snatch was the last great Guy Ritchie movie in my mind. I mean, I loved Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels in Snatch, and then I just don't feel like he's captured it since then. That's my quick take on it. Let's see. Someone threw in the mix Ryan Coogler. I don't see the tone fit. I don't see stylistically what he's done before, and then what he brought to Black Panther, his aesthetics. It doesn't seem like a good fit to me. It seems very two different things. I mean, he did Fruitvale Station, dead serious movie about a real event. Then he does Creed, very serious movie. And then he does Black Panther, which, despite what some people have said, I view it as kind of the most serious of the, probably the most mature of the Marvel movies, perhaps. So that one doesn't fit well for me. All right, I'm gonna go for. My wife came back. I can go for about 5 more minutes. I'm actually was able to get into a press screening of Mission Impossible tonight, so that's pretty exciting for me. My life, I'm new to this whole press thing and actually, getting into press screening. So I'm still very excited about wow, I get to go to a press screening of a Tom Cruise movie. And I just got the approval to go to it today, just 2-3 hours ago. So I got to head out to that in just a little bit. You have a couple more thoughts, questions that you're catching in there?
I am trying to catch up with a bunch of suggestions for directors. That's what I'm seeing right now. Sorry.
And while she looks something up, if you're tuning in a little bit late, the reason I'm sweating so much is it's 109 degrees outside. I actually got a picture of the thermometer from my truck a couple hours ago. It was 112 degrees, and our air conditioner isn't working. There's a guy downstairs working on our air conditioner, but so with these studio lights and the upstairs of our house with the door closed, it's really hot in here. What do we got? Some thoughts?
Sean Gunn, James Gunn's brother?
Yeah, Sean Gunn is James Gunn's brother.
Did you address how he would react to this?
He's tweeted about it. I haven't read the tweets, so I don't know what he tweeted. I just know that he did do a little tweet tirade about it. Let's just say he's on Team Drax. He's on Team Dave Bautista, openly stating, "I am not okay with this." And I don't think I've seen anyone on the crew openly state, "I'm on Team Disney." They've said, "I love the crew." Several of them have indicated they are on Team James Gunn. So Disney screwed themselves pretty bad by the way they did this. Not necessarily the decision. I don't know I don't want to try and convince you where you should fall. I don't know where I fall on whether they should or should not have fired him. The way they did it, though.
3 days ago, our information is very limited.
And our information is limited. That's also why I don't want to make a decision, because we don't know what went on behind the scenes. We don't know what conversations took place when they hired him. Maybe when they hired him, they went, "We looked up these tweets about you, and as long as they don't come out, as long as no one brings it up, as long as it doesn't become a story, it's okay. If it comes up, we need you to gracefully bow out. We're going to fire you, gracefully put your response out to it, but we'll give you the chance. We'll pay you a bunch of money to make some movies, and we'll roll the dice on this one." Maybe I don't know. That clear. That's just crazy speculation on my part. But we don't know what went on behind the scenes. We don't know what conversations happened. And so we have limited information. So I don't like to make decisions on what a corporation should have done in light of the guy making rape jokes 10 years ago. So this is a weird one. Can you think of any story as weird as this one?
Not off the top of my head, but
you're pregnant.
Yes, so true.
Any comments?
I'm going to leave you with one thought, and then I'm going to go make sure that I'm available if he needs me. Basically, there's been a bunch of talk about Disney's past discretions, specifically with their older movies, the racist jokes.
That's true. Was it Song of the South?
They hadn't brought that one up. They were talking about even just like caricatures in Dumbo with the crows and the railroad crew.
So one of my points I brought up was, during my Disney needs to do its best for Disney, one of the points I brought up, if you're tuning in later to this, was that what exactly is the statute of limitations on inappropriate jokes and behavior? So if he made these tweets last week, if they were brand new and he's like making jokes about raping boys, we'd all say, fire this monster. Like everyone would. I almost said something bad. Which we'd all say just fire him. It'd be very simple. But it was 10 years ago, and he's apologized for it already. That's more complicated. Is 25 years ago okay? And so you tie that back to Disney, who made a movie about a slave back in the 40s. Like a singing happy slave. Really, Disney? You're not exactly on the best moral ground if we're going to dig up the past on people. So how far back can you go? And you can find all sorts of stereotypes and all sorts of Disney movies that are not okay. And so I think that's a very fair point to bring up. But once again, Song of the South, or whatever it was called, came out 70 plus years ago. These are 10 years ago. They were... That's why it's hard decisions. I don't know what Disney should have done. I don't have an answer for you. Just to review my points one more time before I close this thing out. First thing you need to decipher is, so we're clear, are we talking about you believe that he's a pedophile or you think he made a sick joke? I've had a bunch of conversations with people that have called James Gunn a pedophile, which means they believe that he touched kids. If you call him a pedophile, you're either slandering him or you think he touched kids. And if you think he touched kids, why are we talking about Disney? We want him in prison. I'll take him in my backyard. I will get the blowtorch and the pliers. You can light him up. I'm squeamish, so I won't watch. And whatever's left, we'll give over to the police if he actually touched kids. But I'm pretty sure none of us actually believe that. We all believe this was jokes. So don't call him a pedophile unless you actually believe that, in which case you should be contacting the police about, look into this guy that you believe did that. It's not a question of Disney if you believe that. It's a question of, I think, from my perspective, he made some disgusting jokes. Second point, as I close this out, James Gunn has always had a sick sense of humor. He worked for Troma. He made the movie Super. He put some pretty dark stuff into a Disney movie, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. He's always had a sick sense of humor. Disney probably knew about these tweets when they hired him. They just didn't care about it because they wanted to hire him, and it became a PR mess, so they fired him. Third thing, Disney can do whatever Disney wants to do. If Disney thinks the best thing to do is fire him, they can fire him. They have the right to do that, and they should do that if that's what's best. Point number 4, however, is that I think they were very reactionary, and I don't think this is what was best for Disney, for the MCU, for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I think waiting, sitting on it, letting it soak in, making a calculated decision, not reacting to a bad headline. A really bad headline, which is James Gunn wrote hundreds and hundreds of rape jokes, then deleted 10,000 tweets to cover it up. That's a bad headline that I can see why you'd want to fire him, but it's probably better to sit and wait on a little. And they reacted, and I think they dropped a bomb on this franchise, and they've created a big, gigantic fire. Number 5, wherever I'm at. I'm very uncomfortable with these sorts of witch hunts. I do not like it when people start trying to dig up dirt from 25 years ago to tear someone down. It's fair if someone is being self-righteous and you go and talking about, well, we need to have clear speech and people in the public eye shouldn't make these statements. And then you go, oh, but you made these rape jokes. That's a fair thing to do because it's pointing out the hypocrisy in someone's behavior. That's not the same thing as a hit piece, though, a gotcha piece. Like, hey, look, I found the craziest thing you ever wrote on the internet and brought it out and put it out here. I don't think that that's a good thing. I don't think it's a healthy thing for us as a culture for us to be on these ongoing long-form witch hunts trying to track people down. And my last one on here is just to address that political motives thing. A lot of people are pointing out that this was done by an alt-right person because Gunn is an outspoken Trump supporter, and so they publish this as a gotcha. I just told you I'm not okay with things like that, so I don't support them doing that. It doesn't really change, however, that James Gunn said this stuff. It doesn't change the equation for me. He said it. There's consequences for that. As a closing, I don't know what those consequences should be. I don't know if he should have been fired. I don't know what they should have done. But let's all sit back and try and be rational. Take our fanboy, our love of James Gunn, put it aside, or take just our immediate offense over reading something abhorrent, offensive. Sit back and go, okay, what are the facts? And what's the right thing to do? I don't have an answer to that yet. I don't necessarily think... Some of you, like, if you just think that those jokes are just way too far, I can see where you would be at. If you're just, like, immediately defending James Gunn, I get where you're coming from, but I would just make sure you kind of sit on it a little bit. But all in all, I think Disney botched this entire thing. I heard some people saying Steven Spielberg, or not here, I can't hear you guys. I saw some of you guys saying Steven Spielberg. Seems like a weird fit to me. Doesn't seem like that. I think there's an edge to Guardians of the Galaxy that Spielberg does not have. He has not had for a long time. And he's just kind of schmarmy in some of the way he does stuff. I just don't think it fits Guardians of the Galaxy. Fits James Gunn very well. So there you have it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in for my thoughts on this one. Unfortunately, this wasn't a fun one in a lot of ways, but it's a bad situation for all of us to be in for the fan base and everything. If you're tuning in later, tell me down in the comment section, what do you think about all this? I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Hopefully we can have a healthy discussion about it. I hate toxic fanboyism. Hopefully I could have done a little bit to try and tame some of that down, help have a more rational discussion about all this. Thank you guys so much for watching.